Hello, everyone. My name is Brendan Malcolm. I'm the owner and founder of the indie game studio Games by Malks, and I'm coming all the way here from Perth, Western Australia. Firstly, I'd just like to thank everyone for coming out to my talk today. It's actually quite nerve-wracking up here because this is my very first public talk. So I hope you enjoy what I have to say. I do hope that I can provide you with some valuable information. So today I'm going to be discussing why deep community-driven engagement is the key to turning your fans into your advocates. I'll be diving deep into many areas about how a thriving community is one of the best things you can have for your game and also for those who play it. I'll be going into detail about how and when to start your community and what you can do as a developer to help your community grow, and the importance of community engagement throughout the development of your game. The key takeaways I hope to achieve by the end of this talk include how, where, and when you should engage with your community in the development cycle, balancing community demands with the vision of your game, and the advantages of engaging with a publishing partner to boost reach and incorporate a new audience. So we've got a lot to cover today, so let's get started. A little bit about myself. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, my name is Brendan, but many people refer to me as Malks. I'm the founder and owner of the indie game studio Games by Malks, and the creator of the RuneScape-inspired idle RPG, Melvor Idle. Prior to my entry into game development, I was working a full-time job back in Perth, managing a small team of around 7 people and looking around the finances for that company. I began my journey into game development way back in 2018 when I had the desire to attempt to create my own idle game. This idea came about when I wanted to try something new and fresh. I was an avid fan of idle and incremental games, so it was quite easy for me to determine what genre of game I wanted to create. Some of the most notable idle games I enjoyed were those of the likes of NGU, Cookie Clicker, Clicker Heroes, just those kind of games. I love playing these games, and it was especially great that I could progress in them while working my full-time job. The drive to create my own game was there, and it was something I definitely wanted to tackle. I just needed to figure out exactly what kind of idle game I wanted to create, and this was a very difficult task. You have an idea that you want to create a game, but what exactly do you want to create? There's an insane amount of games out there already, so what could I possibly create? So I'll be honest and say I couldn't really figure out the answer to that. So I stuck with my gut and decided to make a game that I would personally want to play. Something that I would enjoy in hopes that others would feel the same way. So this is where Melvor Idle was born. It's a RuneScape-inspired idle game that's available on Steam, mobile, and you can also play it via your web browser. Since we started tracking player count in September of 2019, we've had over 2 million players experience the game. So that's a number I never imagined reaching, and it's quite mind-blowing as a solo developer just to see how many people do enjoy something that I've created. As I was starting out, it was easier for me to determine what kind of games I enjoyed, but I don't essentially have the time to play anymore due to the increasing adult responsibilities. This is where the idea of using RuneScape as my inspiration and starting point for my first game came about. Creating a game that was inspired by RuneScape made sense to me, as I was a massive fan of RuneScape. I didn't really see any other idle games similar to what RuneScape had to offer in terms of the depth and progression. I didn't have the time to invest in RuneScape, so turning it into an idle game will be a stellar foundation for me to explore and learn game development. Now, turning RuneScape into an idle game is no easy feat. Have you seen how absolutely massive that game is? Like, there's literally hundreds of, it's been 20 years in development, hundreds of quests, so much story, so much lore, so much art. What could someone like me, a solo developer that has no experience in game development, actually do? What can I actually do? So I wasn't a very experienced developer at all back then. I only dipped my fingers into minor coding courses throughout my teenage years, and even now, today, I'm still learning every day. Starting small was extremely important when taking on a massive task like this. Was I regretting it at the time? No, not at all. It was a challenge I was willing to dive headfirst into. What was more important to me was the gathering of early feedback from my game. I needed to know that there was a desire out there for a game like this, and that the gameplay mechanics I was implementing were interesting and fun. After all, I did not want to spend an incredible amount of time developing something that people didn't even want. I needed people to tell me whether or not I was on the right track. This is where my first fundamental building blocks of a community began, and it's the first major topic that I'll be discussing today. On the topic around the importance of early feedback, I'm going to discuss the benefits of showing off a very early prototype of what you're working on. Prototyping a game is essentially to lay the foundation for what your main mechanics will consist of and what the general sentiment around those mechanics are. Having a small group of individuals who are interested in the genre or game you're working on, providing feedback at the very beginning will set you up for success. Whether they love it or they're not impressed with it, you'll be able to take the feedback given to you and adjust your game accordingly. I developed a tiny prototype of Melvor Idle around the end of 2018. The only thing the prototype consisted of was a single skill to train. In this instant, it was woodcutting, basic mechanics, and artwork that I was exploring at the time. The artwork I was using were royalty-free or licensed assets that I could use to get an idea for the general art style and direction I wanted the game to go. This is an important decision that I wanted to make because the art style I choose now is probably the art style that I'm going to be sticking with. Royalty-free assets saved me a lot of time and money in the beginning. They're extremely valuable to game development, especially when starting out as a solo developer when artistic resources are non-existent. With the prototype I had created, I needed to select what kind of audience I wanted to show it to. It needed to be a small audience because I didn't want to come across as advertising my product. Remember, at this stage, we're only looking for specific feedback on your game and not a high player count from a bunch of posts on various social platforms. We're shaping the mechanics and requesting feedback on what we have made so we can shape the future of our game and see what it will look like. Even small changes at this level could grow to have huge impacts on the finished product. As an example of what I did with Melvor Idle, I posted my prototype on Reddit, specifically the Incremental Games subreddit. They've got a thread every Friday up there called the Feedback Friday thread. The thread's purpose was basically there to attract new potential developers to show off the early prototypes of their game and get specific feedback on how that's going. The subreddit was perfect for me to get an understanding of what players were looking for in a new Idle game. So over the course of a month or two, I posted various versions of Melvor Idle based on feedback I'd received from players who managed to see it. There was only a couple of comments per post, but the feedback was absolutely vital to eventually shaping the game. I was taking the feedback and criticism and adjusted the game around that feedback. I still needed to ensure I was creating a game that I wanted to make, but incorporating the ideas of individuals who have played it and made sense for me to add at the time. Something I noticed while making these adjustments were the comments that I received relating to my changes and how people were appreciative of a developer listening to the feedback and adjusting the game accordingly. Comments from those who made a suggestion and then saw those suggestions were actually added to the game show them that there was a developer there that really cared about their product. This led to these commenters actually becoming invested in the community. I could see that there was a positive impact around listening to what others had to say about your game and making adjustments according to that feedback. These ideas eventuated into the fundamental building blocks of Melvor Idle and its community. So we're coming up to what I like to refer as the first proper release of Melvor Idle, a version of the game that I was happy with, something that I could start inviting a slightly broader audience into. I took all the feedback that I received from my prototyping and reworked the game to something that I believed others would enjoy. Before I made the decision to show off my progress and release the next update, I needed to set up the fundamentals of my potential community. I needed some places where those who may play my game could go and discuss it, make suggestions, provide feedback, and let me know if there's something broken so I could fix it. I came to the decision to open up a Melvor Idle Discord server and create a Melvor Idle subreddit. The decision was purely based on the fact that I was already using these platforms on a daily basis, so it'd be natural for me to answer questions if they did come up. Reddit and Discord are quite different in terms of how users interact with each other. Discord's an open platform where suggestions are more free-flowing and continuous. You can set up channels to keep things organized and keep discussions on topic. Reddit, on the other hand, is set up in a way where it has many active threads going at any single time, all on different topics determined by the original poster. There's no real way to keep Reddit organized as nicely as Discord, in my opinion. The one thing these platforms did have in common is that they provided me with an outlet of communication. I was able to talk and interact with those who decided to play my game and those who decided to say hello. I chose not to use platforms like Twitter, Facebook, or even my own devlog for various reasons. In my opinion, Twitter's very hard to use for valuable feedback for a game. Facebook isn't necessarily home to the wider gaming community. And creating my own devlog didn't really make sense to me at the time because I probably need to use Discord or Reddit to show people what I actually typed up. It was quite the experience when you have the first set of individuals popping into chat and those who seem to be enjoying the game. I've never really had that kind of feeling up until the stage where you have a player coming into your game, something that you've created, something that I'm trying to learn to code, they'll come in and say, hey, I really love your game. That's a really cool feeling. I never took this kind of interaction for granted. I did everything I could to reply to all queries, answer all suggestions, and join in on discussions around the game. Even when this schedule was packed, this remained important. I really enjoyed doing this, and it made my experience with the game and the game development industry much more enjoyable. Joining in on community discussions like this and providing answers and providing players with a platform to talk about your game is an important part of the success of Melvor. And it's something that every single aspiring developer really should focus on. If players can see that the developers of a game that they are playing and they're interacting with the community, they're more inclined to listen to what you have to say, and they're more inclined to also stay within your community. They'll become long-term members, and they'll provide valuable feedback to you that you can use to continue growing your game. Players who are involved in the community, they also tend to, sorry, I've already said that, my apologies. So I'm going to continue talking to you about the importance of listening and interacting with your community throughout this whole talk. I can't stress enough how important that actually is. It's something that, just going a bit off script here, when I started working on Melvor, something that I really love doing and enjoying is talking to the community and just figuring out what they have to say, because the people who are playing your game, they're buying it, they're playing it, they're telling others about it. You need to be listening to what they have to say, because what they have to say can be very important in shaping your game. So for anyone who is wanting to create a game, please, please, please start a community and start interacting with your members, because they are some of the most kind people out there. It's really good. So with the community starting to form, your suggestions are flowing in, your bug reports are being made, and general conversations around development are beginning to pop up. So let's talk about developing your game and how the community you are currently building works into this process. When trying to build your community, there needs to be a reason players will want to join one or more of your social platforms, something that drives them to check out what extra information is available to them. A great way to go about doing this is by keeping players informed with the development progress and getting them excited for what's to come. Using the platforms available to you to post frequent development updates will drive engagement and general community interaction. It also builds hype around your community, which ultimately leads to others talking about your game to their friends or family. If someone is excited about your game, there's a good chance they want to share that excitement with someone else. They've become an advocate, which is crucial if you don't have a marketing budget. Working through the alpha/early access stage of development, there's a good chance your game is changing at a rapid pace, whether it be brand new content, changes to some mechanics, or simply bug fixes. posting regular updates to Discord and Reddit about what you're working on, and sometimes showing off a new feature can generate a lot of discussions. What you post does not need to be a large devlog or paragraphs of information. You can simply show off a screenshot of something that you're working on. That's all you really need. And if you can show off something that the community's been asking for, bonus points. A well-informed community will generate natural discussions on their own. And as more players join your community, more and more people will get excited about the future of your game. Having a hub of information about your game, other than inside the game itself, will generate the traffic and push the growth of your community. Something else that can be very beneficial is the existence of a development roadmap, a graphic or an information piece that outlines what the future of your game will look like. If you have a roadmap available for players to look at, they can see that there is a future for this game, and there's always something to look forward to. This roadmap does not need to outline everything. It doesn't even need release dates, or it doesn't need to be specific. All you need to do is provide basic information of what you would like to add to your game, and that is more than enough in most cases. In my instance, I had a website showing the major features that I'd like to add to Melvor Idle before I called it a finished product. This outlined what skills I wanted to add and anything else that was major, in my opinion, that players would enjoy. There were no release dates. There was no indication of what was next. All I did was mark something as complete and move on to the next one that I felt like making. Alongside all of the planned content on my roadmap, I was also adding smaller features to the game. These were usually suggestions made by the community or smaller pieces of content that I decided would be a great addition at that time. It may be difficult to even come up with a basic roadmap. There's a good chance that you may not know exactly what you want to add to the game. You might be adding content as you see fit without real plan on what's coming next. But that's not a bad thing at all. However, I would very much recommend a basic planning session to see what the future of your game may look like. The roadmap does not need to be set in stone, and you do not have to abide by it or follow it. As long as you are keeping the community informed, then they'll ultimately understand if a planned feature does not make the cut. We've done this a few times with Melvor Idle, where I had a few major features that people were looking forward to on my roadmap, but it didn't make the final release. And all I did was just explain to them why that didn't make it, and they were perfectly fine with it. The roadmap is a fantastic tool for community retention and interaction. It usually generates natural discussions and comments about your game. Personally, I'm more inclined to stick around in a community if I know it's still receiving updates. So at this stage of development, which is still quite early in the process, you should at least have 1 or 2 platforms set up for your community interaction. Unless you're extremely dedicated to social media, I wouldn't set up more than 2 this early. A development roadmap or basic outlines that can be viewed by everyone, showcasing what you have planned. If you decide to use Discord, I would highly recommend setting up channels dedicated to news and announcements, help and questions, bug reports, suggestions, general discussions about the game. This organization is extremely important to you as a developer to keep track of what's going on. With all of this set up, you're now very much ready to start growing your community. And as your community continues to grow, you may start to come to the realization that you are in need of assistance. Your community is active. Everyone is chatting about various topics, and players are asking for help or queries about your game. A growing community can also mean a growing series of events that require moderation action. Not everyone out there has good intentions when it comes to community interaction. Now, we've all seen it in the gaming community. There's some pretty nasty stuff said about some people out there. It's important that your community is perceived as safe and as a place that others can come and have a good time. Troublemakers do exist. There's not much you can do about them other than taking action against them when something does occur. It's important you have the tools necessary at your disposal that will allow you to take action when required. If it hasn't been done up until this point, I would highly recommend creating a set of rules that your community must follow. These rules should be given their own section so they can be easily referred to. Having a set of rules for your community is very, very important. It may sound boring, but trust me, it's a very handy wall of text. There's a very good chance that you're starting to feel overwhelmed here. There's a lot of questions to answer. You find that a lot of your time is going into these questions every day. It's eating into your development time, and you find yourself becoming less productive with development as you're focusing a lot on what the community is saying. I ran into this exact scenario with Melvor Idle, and for some time I allowed this overwhelming feeling to control me and eat into my development time. I knew something had to change. I needed to do something that would allow me to focus more on development. In the beginning of this growth, I was very much against the idea of asking for help. After all, this game is my creation, and I didn't want to put that responsibility onto others or have people help me manage the community. I felt that it was my sole responsibility to do everything. So I'm going to say something really important here, and it's one of the most important things about managing a growing community, and that it's okay to ask for help. Seriously, if you are feeling overwhelmed by the amount of work in front of you, just ask for help. I never wanted to ask anyone for help in the beginning, but let me tell you that when I eventually did, it was one of the best decisions I ever made for the game. That extra bit of assistance goes a very, very long way in allowing you to focus on the development of your game. When talking about assistance within the community, this is where I decided to add moderators to the Discord server. I put out a request asking the community who may be interested in helping me manage and moderate the growing community. I got a bunch of offers, and this is the great thing about a community. Someone's always willing to help. There are genuinely good people out there who simply want to help you and help your game grow. They want what is best for you, the community, your values, and your vision. Those who put their hand up to help will usually be those who have been around for some time. They have actively participated in the community and may have also provided great feedback to you as well. So there comes a time in game development where the community has grown quite substantially. Your player base is increasing and the workload placed on you again is overwhelming. Every single day you find yourself in a chaotic mindset, trying to cope with all these queries, questions, bug reports, suggestions, development timelines, feature additions, and everything else in between. Even with the help from your fellow community, you find yourself wanting to explore more avenues of growth. There's so many things that you can and could be doing, but you just don't simply have the time for. If the revenue from your game is looking good, you could hire more staff to take care of areas like marketing, community management, localization. However, from my experience, this is a very long and expensive process. The thought of finding the right person, interviewing them, hiring them, training them can take months. And that's just one person to fill like one gap out of many. So this is where a publisher comes in. And it's why publishers are so common throughout the game industry. I agreed to the partnership I have now with Jagex for many various reasons. And I'll go through these with you all in a minute to hopefully provide you with an idea of what publishers can actually do to grow your game, your community, and take some of that insane workload off of your shoulders. But first, I want to talk to you about how to find the right publisher and what to actually look for when talking to those who are interested in your game. And this is coming from my experience. So my situation was quite unique, where I was actually approached by Jagex. I became aware during discussions that they had been following the development of Melvor Idle for quite some time, with a lot of their staff actually playing it and enjoying it. At this time, I wasn't actually looking for a publisher, so it caught me off guard quite a bit, especially when it was the company that I've followed since my childhood and the developers of the very game Melvor Idle was inspired by. It was exciting and nerve-wracking at the same time. An important thing to know when going into discussions with potential publisher is that you need to know exactly what you're looking for in one. What can a publisher really do for you that will benefit you and help your game grow? This is important regardless of who makes the first contact. If you're actively searching for a publisher for your game, be sure to have a list of what you want from one. They could be anything from help with community management, localizing your game, funding to assist with rising development costs, using their expert knowledge to learn and grow, marketing and advertising, anything like that. So that's only a small list of what they can bring to the table for you. It's also quite important that you stick to the original vision of your game. Only you know what's best for what you create, and you can't let someone else change that. So my partnership with Jagex took a lot of time to finalize. And that's because I was extremely clear on my values and my vision for Melvor Idle. I knew exactly what I wanted from them. Jagex aligned exactly with my vision and what I had planned for the future of the game. What they could bring to the table was outstanding and would directly benefit the growth of Melvor. They took an immense amount of pressure and workload off of my shoulders, and it allowed me to focus on the development of the game, as well as continue my interaction with the community. A few things Jagex provided that was extremely beneficial and something you should look for when looking into a publisher is that they localized Melvor into 12 different languages, expanding my audience across the globe. Content creation and marketing assets, they created a trailer for the game, promo material, and other creative services that would make the game appealing to a wider audience. This also included a complete rebranding of the game with a new logo, key artwork to give it that identity. They provided community management and social media management. They have an amazing team of individuals that dive deep into the community, providing reports and ideas to its continued amazing growth. They also look after social media platforms for me, like Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, to reach even more people, because I don't really use those, so it's not really something that I'd want to tackle. Their knowledge and love for games was also a major bonus. They're extremely helpful and are ready to pounce at any requests that I make. So I'm going to go into detail about how some of these services provided by Jagex helped our community grow further than we ever thought that we could achieve ourselves. So the first one is localization. And this was a major undertaking from both myself and Jagex to localize the game. With the help of their dedicated team that manages the RuneScape localization, we were able to translate the game into those 13 languages. This immediately opened up our game to an international audience and allowed people around the world to experience Melvor Idle in a language that they are familiar with. The work that we put into this was quite intense. Melvor Idle was not designed to be localized from the beginning. So we had to do a lot of work on our end to convert everything into a format that was easier to manage for both of us and the localization team. The new language structure of the game allows us to translate the game into many more languages where we see fit without doing much at all on our end. This kind of setup and functionality is vital if you want to grow your game on a global scale, or even to just one region specifically to attract more audiences on the other side of the world. A lot of people ask if localizing the game is even worth it. It's an expensive undertaking, and building the game around many different languages can be daunting and time-consuming. For us, yeah, it was definitely worth it. We've seen incredible growth in countries that I would never imagine Melvor Idle taking root. It's something that I highly recommend everyone consider when developing a game. Structuring the strings in your game to allow for localization will make the future growth and scale easier to manage when you get there. Localizing your game straight away is not something I'd recommend though. I'd suggest building the game in your native language first. Once your mechanics and strings are all finalized, that's when I make the call to translate it. The best way to go about determining what languages to implement will be determined by the demographics of your player base. Look at the countries that are playing your game and see if there are any countries that would benefit from their native language being implemented. If I use this method for Melvor Idle, the first language I would have chosen would have been German. This is because in early 2021, about 3 to 5% of my players were actually from Germany, and it was the highest non-English speaking country in terms of percentage. And upon seeing this, I would have made the call to translate the game into German to accommodate for those players. And since the release of Melvor Idle in November 2021, which did include the localization, non-English speaking countries now make up around 20% of our player base. This is an increase from maybe 6% or so in mid-2021, before we even decided to add more languages. So yeah, it was definitely worth it, even if it took a lot of time and effort to implement. So I can't stress enough how you really should set up your game to be localized eventually, even if it's not on your mind at the start. It will save you so much time. There's another area of localization that made me hesitant to implement other languages. It was the first ever time I dipped my toes in languages other than English. As a community-driven game, I was worried about the potential influx of non-English speaking community members, bug reports, and suggestions. How could I possibly answer these queries if I didn't understand the language? All of that worry went away as soon as the languages were actually added. Why? Well, because non-English speaking players are actually very, very respectful. They are very aware that the developers of the game, in my example, English speaking, and what they'll actually do is they'll translate their query for you before they post it. So this made everything so much easier for us. We have a bug tracker with a lot of non-English speaking players going in, reporting bugs, but they translate it for you. It's so much easier. With the game now available in 13 different languages, the help of experienced community managers became apparent. And this leads to my next benefit of Jagex as a publisher, and something that they were able to provide. So with a growing player base across the globe and increased interaction within the social platforms, it was important that we had someone there to help manage and coordinate the influx of players. Jagex provided us with a fantastic team of community managers who have been key to keeping the community engaged. They provide weekly insights into how the community is growing and performing, provide reports so we can see exactly what's being discussed, and answer queries and concerns of players. This kind of support allowed us to put more time into development rather than spending most of our time every day talking with the community. Now, don't get me wrong, helping others is fantastic and rewarding. It's something that I really enjoy doing, and after all, I've been developing the game with a community-driven mindset. But the reality is, focus needs to be on development. That way you can create the best product possible for your community. Community management is an important service provided by any publishing partner, and it has helped us considerably. Another amazing service a publisher can provide, and something that Jagex aced in my circumstance, was creative services. There are a lot of ways creative services can help your game and stand out from the competition. It can help drive your vision aesthetically and really create a unique experience both inside and outside of your game. Prior to obtaining a publisher, our branding for Melvor Idle was basically non-existent. The visual aspect of the game did not exist. I just created a logo in Paint, and I was like, yep, that looks good. Yeah, creating artwork for Melvor was definitely not one of my expertise. Jagex were able to create a full set of branding assets, a new logo for the game, and even an incredible trailer for us to really make us stand out. The work and effort that was put in to cement the visual aspect for Melvor Idle was incredibly important, as it gave us the fundamental aesthetic moving forward. It created a recognizable presence for us. All of this allowed my community to grow quite substantially while taking the workload off of myself at the same time. So I can't stress enough how important it was to be able to focus on the development of the game. It allowed me to create the best product I could while Jagex took care of the rest. This is what a publisher should be doing, and it's what you need to look for when searching for one. I don't think I would have been able to grow Melvor Idle to what it is today without their help. When you have a talented team of individuals ready to help, this can greatly benefit your community that you've been growing since the beginning. We've done a lot of stuff with the community since the partnership began. We ran a bunch of competitions, social interaction events, and we've even done our first ever live streams, all managed and taken care of by Jagex while allowing me to still be at the forefront of the community. It's this kind of knowledge that I never had, and I never would have thought about doing with them. This is only a small indication of how a publisher can benefit your game and benefit the growth of your community. In my experience, if you aren't currently looking for a publisher, just keep that idea floating around in your head, just in case one does approach you, because you need to be prepared for it. So coming up to the present day of Melvor Idle, we're currently sitting on around 40,000 Discord members. Reddit's currently sitting on around 25,000, and social media platforms like Twitter and Facebook are still growing every day. So a community that's starting to get this large could be tough to manage, and keeping them active and engaged is even harder. So I spoke briefly about community events and how they can increase interaction amongst members and platforms. They're a fantastic way to give back to the community who allowed me to get to this point. With a community this large, it's always important to remember where it all started. The small growing community in the beginning is what brought us here today. The focus and dedication I gave to the community interaction in the beginning and really paying attention to what everyone had to say was an important part of the success. It's also important to give back to the community in some way. And we did this in the form of competitions and events that had actual prizes for them to win. And we also run some regular giveaways in our Discord server. Even today, I do what I can to treat the community the same way I did at the very beginning. I'll join in on random discussions, answer direct messages, directly help other members of the community with issues they may be having, talking to them about suggestions and planning the game. All the usual stuff that worked in the beginning. Having that relationship with members is fantastic, and it's something that I really enjoy. I love talking to everyone and seeing what they have to say. I love taking a very laid-back approach and just acting as if I'm part of the community myself. I believe the players also enjoyed this aspect. Seeing a developer of a game that they enjoy just casually interacting with the community can be quite rare, but it's great to see. Although the growth doesn't stop here, I'm always about continuing to grow and provide what's best for the game and the community. And something I'll be working on behind the scenes is the growth of Games by Malx itself and how I can take my studio to the next level. I started off as a solo developer, working on the project myself. I had some great help with ideas and planning from my good mate, who I've actually been fortunate enough to officially hire full-time. But the growth didn't stop there. One of the best things that come out of the community of Melvor Idle are those talented individuals who come through and make themselves known. I have 2 talented remote part-time developers helping me with various aspects of the game. These individuals were actually part of the community. I reached out to them with an idea and proposal, and they happily agreed. It seems like some of the best decisions I continue to make for the game is asking for help, whether it be moderators for the community, potential publishing partners, developers for the game, or anything else. Asking for help is incredible. If you're ever feeling overwhelmed, just ask for help. Some of the best help comes directly from your very own community. Right now, the team at Games by Malx consists of myself and my first hire working full-time, the 2 part-time remote developers, and I've also got 2 freelance artists working on art assets for us. In the beginning, I never thought I'd have a team of talented individuals working on a game I thought would just be pretty cool to make. It's definitely been quite the journey for sure, and it's been one of the most rewarding things I've ever done. I used to solely focus on Melvor Idle and Melvor Idle only, but that focus has since changed to the focus of the growth of the studio. I'm fortunate enough to have a partner like Jagex assist me in this process and provide the direct knowledge which has been extremely valuable to me. I plan to continue to grow the team, continue to learn, and all of this will allow me to focus on what's best for everyone. I plan to continue interacting with the community and joining in on all those random discussions. I want to keep giving back to the community as well, because after all, they're the main reason I'm standing up here today. And we're currently working on our very first expansion for Melvor Idle, and it's one of the most ambitious updates that we've ever attempted to create. Having all of this help by my side has made this possible. So we're coming to the end of my presentation. I'd like to thank everyone for coming out today and listening to what I have to say. Being up here today was extremely nerve-wracking, so sorry if I rambled and sped through this entire speech. I do hope that what I had to say about how I managed my community, what I did to grow my game, has given you some valuable information if you are going to create your own game or you're currently creating your own game. I do personally think that starting a community is one of the best things you can do, and injecting the love for your game into your community, they'll send that straight back to you, and it will help your game grow. So thank you again, everyone. If we have some time for questions, so if anyone has any questions, let me know. If not, I'll be floating around if you want to come up.
Hey, really inspiring story. Thank you for the chat, for the talk. Basically, when you started and you were very small and you started building the community, Did you ever have the fear of anyone stealing your idea? And what did you tell yourself to rationalize that fear?
I guess the funniest thing about being worried about someone stealing my idea when my idea kind of comes from RuneScape. No, I didn't. I had no issues with someone coming in and stealing my idea. It's not really something I ever thought about. I thought it as if someone's going to come and, I guess, steal my idea, it's also a developer that's wanting to enter the space, and I'm all for that. If they can do a better job than I have, then I'm all for that. I'm not really about competition or trying to beat everyone else. I'm all about making sure that if someone wants to make a game, make whatever you want. If your game wants to be inspired by Melvor Idle, just do it. Because it'll bring more choice and more games for players to play. Because if someone doesn't like Melvor Idle, there could be something else for them to enjoy. That's kind of the thought I had with that.
Thanks. I was just wondering what the sort of the role is of if you did this, of appointing people who are in the forums to then manage the forums, to be like mods themselves. And how do you find those people, and do you build relationships? Yeah, just speak to that if possible. Yeah.
As in, how do I find them?
Yeah, like how does it work? I'm new to this, so I'm just aware that like very often you get these sort of long-standing loyal supporters of a community, and then they become appointed mods, and they sort of moderate the forums, and they help to maybe manage some of the more negative aspects, some of the hate speech, whatever it might be.
Yeah. Yeah, so our moderators came directly from the community. And the way we kind of found them was they're all long-term standing members of the community. When you are interacting with the community on a daily basis, you generally know who's there every day. You generally know who has good intentions for your game and who wants to see you grow. And when we opened up applications for community members to appoint them as moderators, we looked for those who have been in the community for a long time. We went through all the history to make sure that they did have the good intentions, which made it a lot easier. It's hard to say exactly how they were found, but it's generally one of the things that you'll know when you see it. You'll have people that you're communicating with directly for quite some time, and they'll be perfectly fit for moderator if they do end up applying for it. So it's kind of like those things where you just kind of have to see how everyone is communicating and just try and make that decision based on how they interact with the broader audience. Cool. That's all we have time for. Sorry about that. If anyone does have any other questions, feel free to come down here and come say hi. Thank you.